This month marks 24 years since Guantanamo Bay became the world's most notorious legal black hole. What began as an experiment in detention beyond the law has hardened into a symbol of permanent injustice. Joining us is former Guantanamo Bay detainee and human rights advocate Mansour Adaifi, who lived the consequences of that experiment. Mansour, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and jazakumullah khairan for taking out your time and joining us on Radio Islam International.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much for having me today.
Now, the question, Mansour, is that after so many years, it's still this place still holds some men. In simple terms, why is this prison still open?
Simply, it's open because the United States government wants to keep this notorious military prison open. As you know, Guantanamo was opened in 24 years ago, and on Sunday will be the 24th years of the opening of Guantanamo. It was created outside of the law, outside of the legal system, outside of our humanity. Guantanamo is an active crime. It was specifically open to house or to detain or kidnap Muslim boys and men. And recently was used to detain migrants after what they were classified as enemy combatants. So we have what we have seen for the last 24 years, the development of the so-called war on terror to target migrants, journalists, activists, and so on. And if you remember when Trump in his campaign in 2016, he said he would keep Guantanamo open and fill it with bad dude. Exactly, that what's going on now.
And there are some men who have never been charged and have been cleared years ago. What reason does the U.S. give for keeping them locked up?
Well, basically, if you go, the actual number of men and children detained at Guantanamo is still unknown. You know, approximately we said 800 Muslim men and children, but the actual number is still classified. And of those 800, around 50 remain in Guantanamo. 90%, 98.46% are innocent. That based on the U.S. government document. Those people were kidnapped, tortured, and abused, and released without trial charges. There remain prisoners in Guantanamo in 4 categories. The first category, 3 brothers who have been cleared for release, at least one of them cleared in 2010, yet still in prison and detained in Guantanamo. The second category, which is they call them forever prisoner, that includes Abu Zubaydah, a Palestinian prisoner from Gaza, actually one of the most tortured prisoner in the CIA and FBI history. The third category, which is convictions. And these convictions, you have to put 1,000 mark questions because these convictions is under plea deals. Then the fourth category, which is military commissions. And for those who don't know about the military commissions, it is specifically designed for Guantanamo. And the US government, they does not want to try those who are accused before the military commission, before your justice system, because these brothers were tortured, abused, raped, and so on. So what they did, they created what's so-called military commissions, which allow the government to use torture, confession obtained under torture, evidence also obtained under torture, and classified evidence. So neither the defense or the lawyers are allowed to know what evidence are being used against them. Simply, that's what's going on now in Guantanamo. It's one of the biggest stain in the United States history, which also become a blueprint. And as you remember, last year in June, when Ron DeSantis, governor of Florida, he's opened his own Guantanamo, which is called Alligator Alcatraz. Ron DeSantis was in Guantanamo, and he modeled Alligator Alcatraz after Guantanamo.
And From your experience and living that consequences from the inside, did it feel like a prison or a place with no rules at all?
Well, Guantanamo, we cannot say it's a detention or a prison. No, it's beyond that. And I advise the listener or the viewer, please Google this research published by Seton Hall Law School that Guantanamo actually was an experimenting lab on Muslim prisoners or detainees or kidnappee. The research titled Guantanamo America's Battle Lab. Guantanamo America's Battle Lab. This research was published based on the US government document and was authored by psychologists, scholars, and former guards and interrogators, and so on. So the purpose, as you know, when George W. Bush in 2001 launched his Crusade War, he said, we are going to bring these guys to justice or bring justice to them. It's not about justice. It's about revenge. It's about experiment. It's about political and economic interest, and it's a message to the world, but from the United States that they don't care about the international law. They don't care about anything. And as you know, what happened in Venezuela, an elected president was kidnapped and taken to the United States, and even Trump, just like last night, what he said he does not need
Mm,
the international law. So what he needs, his own morals and ethic
yes.
that restrain him. And that man, we just 1 year in the White House, see what damage he has done, not just to the American policy and economy, but worldwide. So Guantanamo, it can't fit under any, because when you talk about the prison or detention, it's usually part of the justice system. Guantanamo, there is no justice. There is no authority for even U.S. Court or law. It just, it is a black hole built inside the military base in Guantanamo.
Now, even those that have been released or former detainees, they continue to live with the long-term trauma. What does freedom really look like after decades in Guantanamo?
Well, freedom without justice is not freedom at all, because now we are, as Cage International and Guantanamo Survivors Fund, we are trying to support and help the former Guantanamo detainees, also to some extent the victims of the so-called global war and terror, or those who are being arrested or detained under the terror law. So it's not just become, the terror law or terror policies. It become laws target, as we say, particularly Muslims, but now also activists and journalists and dissent and anyone who opposed, especially what's going on in Gaza. So one imagine when detainees, and even the term detainees or prisoners, I cannot agree with it, because it just could not be, or hostages were released from Guantanamo. They were released under conditions, surveillance, monitoring. Some of them actually had to wear ankle monitoring for 10 years, living in the stigma, harassment. Some of them listed in the Interpol. Some of them can't have travel document, no legal status. Some of them actually imprisoned and sentenced to death in some countries. Some of them actually died because the lack of medical health care. So life after Guantanamo, like as I told you, freedom without justice is not freedom. The United States has not acknowledged or apologized or compensate those men. And as I said, 98% 43% in detained at Guantanamo were totally innocent. They have no connection to terrorism or Al Qaeda, or they didn't play any role in 9/11 whatsoever. So not just that, like as I told you, they still live in the stigma after Guantanamo, which hindered their life to build their life or to have certainty or build a life they can have families and jobs and so on.
Mm. And like you mentioned, there were so many innocent detainees. Is there any hope that through different mediums they could receive compensation, or at least those that were responsible for this to be held accountable?
Well, this is what we are working now with Cage International. We are pushing for the closure of Guantanamo and accountability. And I hope one day the United States will compensate those victims and survivors and so on. It's a matter we have to fight for justice. That's one of the reasons we're still fighting for the closure of Guantanamo and demanding accountability and compensation for the victims, not just the survivors, but also the victims. What I would like to shock the listeners and the viewers today that the youngest prisoner at Guantanamo or detainee was only a few months old. And for years, I have been holding back not to say this publicly because my lawyers they said you need to find something to back your claims. Finally, I found some testimony by one of the former detainees. They actually remember that there was an infant, few months old, was detained at the hospital. They brought him along his father. So this is kind of the secrecy of Guantanamo. There is some stuff we cannot talk about it because we need everything we say. It has to be, fact checked. Everything has to be, 100%. So yeah, soon inshallah I'll publish my article about Guantanamo children. It is really really shocking seeing around 60 children in prison in Guantanamo, and actually one of them died there, Yasser Zahrani. He was at least 16 years old when he was taken to Guantanamo, and he was killed in 2006 under the torture.
And finally, during the Biden administration, there were some calls to shut it down for good. But then, of course, now with Donald Trump back in the White House, we don't know what would happen. Is there any realistic chance to close Guantanamo for good in the near future?
Well, I don't think that was going to happen in Trump administration, and it's elected for the political will by Biden and Obama to close Guantanamo. They could have closed if they want to, but it's not their priority. It's not. It does not. It's not like it does not affect them. So also, and I hope that what we are doing now, we need to keep the pressure. We need to keep the campaign to close Guantanamo and not to forget about our brothers and their families. And Guantanamo is not just in Cuba. It's we can see it now everywhere. What happened to our brothers and sisters in Palestine, the torture, the abuse, the starvation, the famine, the rape, and so on. Also, we are seeing Guantanamo policies embedded in other prisons, like what happened now to the hunger strikers in the or the Filton 24. They from Palestine. Actually, they were also the same thing, arrested under the terror law for being activists. They have been in prison for over 2 years without trial, without bail. They are on hunger strike, and the same policy the British government keeps ignoring them. So we are not just pushing for the closure of Guantanamo. We are also trying to fight the Guantanamo policies everywhere because Guantanamo become a blueprint for regimes to target dissident activists, journalists, and so on.
Mansoor, Jazakumullah khair, and thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your insight, your personal experience as well. And we support, the fight that you and other advocates are doing to see Guantanamo finally closed and for justice, accountability, and human dignity to be restored. Our prayers and support is with you.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That was